Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Welcome to All Indiana Politics, where this week we focus on the I's: insurrection, impeachment, and inauguration. On Wednesday, the U.S. House of Representatives impeached Donald Trump for a second time, this time for accusations of inciting the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. The vote came less than 24 hours after we first told you that one of those insurrectionists was found with a truckload of guns, ammunition, and homemade explosive devices, and may have been targeting Indiana's Congressman Carson. I spoke with Carson just minutes after the Speaker of the House announced the final vote total.
Well, it was a very sad and necessary duty today to vote to impeach the president once again. But, you know, I swore an oath to protect and defend our Constitution and our democracy. That means Donald Trump must be removed from office before he does more damage or more lives are in danger at best. I think it's encouraging. The vote to impeach today was a bipartisan majority of the People's House. It encouraged me to see some more of my Republican colleagues stand up, quite frankly, and do the right thing. Unfortunately, some of those who voted against impeachment today justified their failure to act by saying it would cause more division.
Yeah, 10 Republicans voted yes. Obviously, a lot voted nay. A lot of them also said that this was purely political, and because he's essentially going to be out of office next week anyway, there's really no reason behind it. Your response?
Well, I think that your vote is a record, and that tells many of their constituents that they were unwilling, even at the last minute, even when they had cover, even when they didn't have to fear Trump staying in office for 4 more years, with just a few days left, they were still unable to stand up against a would-be tyrant. The fact that Trump's insurrectionists came to the Capitol with plans to kidnap a fellow Hoosier, Vice President Pence, Speaker Pelosi, other officials, and even some Republicans, it's disappointing.
I want to get to that because obviously he's been impeached because of everything that happened last week. And the last time we talked, we didn't know at that point, you and I don't know, maybe you did, but obviously the public wasn't aware that you were the target of one of these people.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. It's disturbing. You have this indicted terrorist now. He had the means and opportunity to carry out a violent attack, injure and destroy government officials, related offices in our nation's capital. I was on the list, and we receive threats regularly, and it's something that we take very seriously. I think we have to get to the bottom of the failures that we've seen within law enforcement, but we also want to support those men and women who serve honorably in our police departments and our federal agencies, and give them the resources that they need to thwart future attacks.
And again, the last time we spoke as well, you wanted investigations being done into some of the law enforcement that was there. And it turns out that several of them, if not more, are being investigated for, as you said, being sympathizers to those folks.
Absolutely. More and more is being uncovered. We also want to look into Capitol Hill personnel, members of staff, and possibly members of Congress. That would be most unfortunate. But this is the reality we're having to deal with. I think that this is the influence that Donald Trump has had on the hearts and minds of not only people who support him, but from members of Congress who were sent by their constituents to a co-equal branch of government. They fell prey, as so many have done throughout history, to a narcissistic, selfish, charismatic figure. So he got the narcissistic supply he needed. And it's unfortunate that many of these folks are going to have to go to jail and be prosecuted as a result.
Back to the impeachment for a moment. Your message for Mitch McConnell, because at this point, number one, he said he hasn't decided whether or not he's going to convict, and we don't know if that's actually going to take place. At least he said not as early as some would like. Your message to him.
You know, my hope is that Mitch McConnell will as well sees that Donald Trump will no longer be president. He has nothing to fear. He should be concerned about serving his constituents who he has failed. And a failure to really hold Donald Trump accountable shows a lack of leadership on the part of Mitch McConnell. My appeal to Mitch McConnell is that he should do the right thing. He's been in Congress for decades now, and he shouldn't have to fear any president. He should only be concerned about what his constituents think and doing the right thing on behalf of his colleagues. And so if he wants to show true leadership and salvage a part of his reputation that was damaged under President Trump's administration, he should do the right thing and make sure that Trump is held accountable.
Congressman, always good to see you, sir. Be safe.
What an honor. You too. Take care.
All right. Take care.
All right.
And by now, you likely know the vote breakdown. All Democrats voted to impeach, with 10 Republicans joining them. All of Indiana's GOP House members voted no. We reached out to them, but none would agree to come on with us this week. But Republican Victoria Spartz did speak on the floor during the debate.
Madam Speaker, I appreciate a variety of opinions, but any accusations must go through the proper due process, whether it's election fraud or an impeachable offense. And someone who did not support the objection to certification last week, I will not support this political charade today. The rule of law and due process is vital to what our constitutional republic stands for.
All this, also this from Republican Jackie Walorski. In the wake of a divisive election and last week's horrific attack on the U.S. Capitol, Congress should be entirely focused on uniting the American people and strengthening our country. Impeaching the president with less than a week left in his term will not advance either of these goals. She went on to say that anyone who commits violent or destructive acts will be held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. All right, coming up, the future for Mike Pence, what he might do after leaving office next week, and could it include a run for president? And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. The inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris Wednesday will mark the end of the vice presidency of Mike Pence. So how will he be remembered? What about his role after the election? And what comes next? Brooke Martin is with Tom Lobianco, D.C. reporter for Business Insider and the author of Piety and Power, the book on Pence's 2016 campaign.
Tom, thanks for your time. You know, usually at a time like this for an outgoing administration, legacy's mostly set, things are winding down, but things are changing by the day right now for Mike Pence. Can we say what is the Mike Pence legacy from his time in the White House? Did it change on January 6th?
Yeah, it certainly seems to. Look, at the very least, he has made finally a clear break from Trump. It wasn't always going to be that way, but certainly the moments of leading up to January 6th and the attack that happened on January 6th changed all of that. Now, will that change the way that he's remembered? I think it becomes a part of it. Certainly if I was to write another chapter for the book detailing all this, I think we'd have to focus a good bit on the letter that he wrote, saying that, yes, he's going to certify the electors as is his constitutional duty, but also that, that was a precedent that he sets there. And, his focus on the idea and really a founding principle of this country that no single person, no single individual should be able to make unilateral executive decisions. I mean, that is a monarch, a dictator.
You were with Mike Pence on the campaign trail. Do you think there's any way he had any idea that this is what it would turn into?
One of the things I wrote about in the book, and I think it's kind of borne out, there's a sense that if you could just survive Trump for a little while, then the political fortunes would be incredible. And this calculated a good bit into how they handled the Access Hollywood tape back in October 2016. They were planning on Trump losing, and then they would catapult to the front of the pack for the Republican nomination in 2020. Now, obviously, that did not happen. There's sort of a similar calculation going on, for the last 4 years, really, which is if Pence could survive, then he would have another shot at the nomination in 2024. Ironically, Trump announcing that he was probably, telling people that in private, but, with him, nothing's really private, telling people that he was probably going to run again in 2024, that, again, that sucks the air out of the sails for Pence.
Obviously, we here in Indiana know Mike Pence as a governor and as a vice president. You do as well. How does his time in D.C. compare with while he was governor here in Indiana? What differences do you see that stick out most?
Yeah, interesting thing about Mike Pence is that when he was governor, it was one of the first times in his life and career where he was the one having to make the decisions, and problems were landing at his feet. His time as governor, he was really hobbled by a lack of executive experience, some staff problems, and his own ambitions, really. He had one foot out the door throughout the entire time. Him as vice president is a very different beast. It's really more about unswerving loyalty to Trump. Proving his fealty time and again, trying to survive numerous scandals.
What does the vice president do next? Come back to Indiana, stay visible in politics? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I've heard a little bit of chatter, probably come back to Indiana. I'd heard that some, potentially a couple of conservative colleges might try to recruit him as the president. Could be they don't do anything, could be they lean back, could be they try to get some corporate boards, maybe go around, work the speaking circuit. I don't know if frankly, I don't know if carrying water for Trump would help on the speaking circuit, but maybe he could spin it a different way. So a lot up in the air right now. I do know this. He's keeping basically the same political team. At least that's my understanding. Top advisors like Mark Short will still be around him, Kellyanne Conway, Marty Opes, familiar name around Indianapolis. A lot of the same people will still be around him. And of course, really his chief advisor and closest confidant above all others is Karen Pence.
All right. Tom LoBianco, thank you for your perspective and your time.
Thank you.
And coming up, the second impeachment of President Trump. What does it mean for Republicans and Democrats moving forward? Our experts weigh in next. We welcome back Democrat Laura Beck and Republican Pete Seat. Good to see you both. Pete, we'll start with you this week. The impeachment of President Trump, was it warranted?
Well, I think it's hard to say that there is not political motivation behind this decision on the part of Democrats to proceed with the impeachment vote and later the trial in the Senate, which I think is the most important part here right now. Is if I were Joe Biden, I would be livid because according to the latest estimates, the trial in the Senate will begin at 1 p.m. on Wednesday afternoon. That is a solitary hour after Joe Biden is sworn in as president. So rather than focusing on him and his inaugural address and his plans for this country, we're still going to talk about Donald Trump. Democrats remind me of the way I try to lose weight. I dial up Basbo's Pizza, get a whole pizza, eat the whole thing, and tell myself I'll start eating healthier tomorrow. They say, well, we can heal the country tomorrow. We've got to impeach first. I don't think it's going to help this country heal our divides.
Your response, Laura?
Well, I'm a little disappointed in Pete's response, not about the weight loss, because I can totally relate to that. Mine would be ice cream, not Basbo pizza, but ice cream. But when you think about what this country has been through in the last week and the fact that the president of the United States incited an insurrection, we are learning more and more every day. And I think we're going to continue to learn more and more every day about how serious it was, just how much in danger our elected officials, their staffs, people who work in the Capitol building, law enforcement, for example, we're learning more about just how very dangerous this was. I mean, when you think about it, Mike Pence was 60 seconds and less than 100 feet away from coming into contact with a crowd that was standing outside yelling to hang him. So impeachment is the right course of action. You can't look at this, I think, from a political lens. You have to look at it from an American lens. And when you think about what Representative Liz Cheney said, it really rung true with so many people. And I think that is really going to be driving this, especially as we move into the coming days, because the members in the Senate who are sitting in judgment over Donald Trump were also witnesses and were the targets of this crowd.
Pete, Laura said that the president incited violence, and we've heard that from a number of lawmakers and pundits across the board. Your thoughts?
I think what the president said was inappropriate, and he should not have said what he said that day shortly before this mob walked down Pennsylvania Avenue and started to storm the Capitol. But what we are learning, to Laura's point, is that a lot of this was planned well in advance. It was premeditated on the part of a lot of these leaders. So whether the president incited the violence with his words or not, people can come to that conclusion, but it's not as if he said something and the people in that crowd thought, oh, we can now go storm the Capitol. They were making plans to do precisely that well in advance of getting to Washington, D.C.
Well, hold on real quick. Let me just ask this to Pete real quick. Hasn't he been kind of doing this for the past couple of months, Pete? It wasn't just that day.
Yeah, he refused to accept the results of the election. I mean, we talked about that on this show, and I think it was very clear from November 7th, the day that Joe Biden was announced as president-elect, who won this election. But I would also say at some level, each and every one of us is at fault for what happened on January 6th. We didn't smash windows and raid the Capitol, but we've all played a role in the divisive and corrosive politics across this country, and we all need to look in the mirror.
Laura, I cut you off. Go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
No, Phil, I guess the point I wanted to make was that before even the election, so this has been a pattern with Donald Trump in sowing mistrust in the election. He did it in 2016 when he was running for president against Hillary Clinton. And he's been doing it all along this election and cycle as well. He has been sowing mistrust. And that when you watch some of the videos, I've spent, unfortunately, too much time over the last week watching some of these videos and reading these articles and following all of this. When you're watching and seeing what people were saying, how they were behaving, some of the things they were yelling during this. I mean, this was stop the steal. They believe because Donald Trump and his enablers, including many of the Republicans in Congress in Indiana who refused to come on your show, they were yelling stop the steal because they put the validity of a democratic process in question. And that is part of inciting the insurrection. So that's a key part here. The other element, too, is when you think about this, we're just coming off the heels of this election in Georgia. And again, if you were watching some of these ads, if you were looking at some of the things that were said, I mean, as they were trying to assault our law enforcement officers, they were yelling, hold the line, hold the line. Hold the line was the rallying cry for Kelly Loeffler's campaign.
Well, real quick, because I'm running out of time here.
We're putting into that. Mm-hmm.
Should the Senate hold a trial, to Pete's earlier point, even after he's out of office?
Yeah, I think they should. I believe they should, yes.
Pete?
Yeah, I mean, they should go ahead and do it, but we should also see that there is political motivation behind doing so.
Laura, Pete, always good to see you guys. Thank you very much. And welcome back to All Indiana Politics. We'll be with you for a special edition on Tuesday night. Governor Eric Holcomb will give his State of the State address, laying out his top priorities for the year and for the General Assembly. That speech will be Tuesday at 7 p.m., and you can see it live here on Wish TV and wishtv.com. We will also have live coverage for you on Wednesday as Joe Biden and Kamala Harris take their oaths to become the next president and vice president of the United States. And we'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.